D&D Online is an online role-playing game that captures the essence of the tabletop experience that legions of D&D fans have enjoyed over the years. Here we have two adventurers, a cleric and a sorcerer, traveling through the city of Stormreach, deep in the heart of Eberron, the newest fantasy setting from Wizards of the Coast. Eberron is a magical setting that combines high epic fantasy with pulp noir intrigues in a very high adventure setting. So here they're traveling towards the spot that most D&D players know and love as the start of many an adventure, the tavern. Notice how elements of the port city combine with the more fantastical magical elements to create a truly unique feel in today's MMPs. Another thing unique about DDO in relation to other MMPs is its emphasis on the D&D adventure. So here, for example, the characters are going towards the tavern, and as they get inside, they'll be looking for NPCs who will start them off on different types of journeys. The taverns are where most DDO players will come to meet with each other, group up with each other, find new quests, or recuperate from their past adventures. With D&D Online, we really wanted to focus on getting people into the adventure as quickly as possible. That's why there's no endless running or long waits in order to get to where you want to go to start the adventure. The other thing that D&D Online does is we've tried to eliminate any sense of the grind or tedium that comes from advancement. So in D&D Online, your experience points and advancement truly comes from completing quests or sub-goals within quests. Here, for example, the characters take out kobolds, but they're not getting actually any experience points for those kobolds. We didn't want to encourage or incentivize endless camping of a particular spot. Rather, we wanted the game's focus to be where D&D's focus is, as a group of players cooperatively solving puzzles and adventures together. The other thing that fits into this theme is that all of our adventure spaces are truly instanced, private playgrounds for players to engage the denizens and challenges of the dungeon without interference or grief from other people. The D&D pen and paper analog would be, in today's MMPs, of a bunch of players sitting around a table trying to play D&D and random strangers walking by and throwing the dice around, tossing the chips around. Right? That's not really D&D, and we didn't want it to have a place in D&D Online. So all of D&D's online adventures are instanced just for the party's enjoyment alone. Another area that D&D Online really seeks to distinguish itself is in its combat system. Instead of a watch and wait combat system, it's really much more of an active visceral experience in which as you click, you can attack. D&D Online is at its heart a much more tactical and strategical experience in terms of its combat than many other systems. Often players who come into the game fresh from a typical MMP will rush blindly ahead, seeking to conquer the dungeon by sheer force. D&D players will learn that really relying on the strengths of the group, so having the rogue doing searches for traps, protecting the mages in careful combat, all of these will lead to greater success over the course of the dungeon than just typically running blindly ahead. In many adventures, there's what we call DM text that briefly flashes across the screen to give you some context or story clue about the dungeon. That, of course, up ahead is one of the most feared monsters in all of the game, the rust monster, which can quickly lead to your items disappearing rapidly when you engage in melee combat with it. Another part of the main combat challenge in D&D Online is each of the monsters typically has a main gimmick or behavior that you have to confront. And so when we combine different monster types, so in this case, the spiders who can web you and leap upon you, the rust monster that can quickly wear away your items, it's often much more challenging to fight this combination of monsters in a space than it is to fight numerous single instances of the same creature. One of the other things that characters will often find as they travel through the dungeons are different types of collectible items. So here, for example, from the alchemy table, they find a different type of item that once they collect it enough times, they can go up to the city and turn it into an NPC for a reward. This is in addition to the treasure chests and also the loot that you'll often find from breaking open barrels and crates you'll find in the dungeons. Another element of D&D Online that we really wanted to try to promote was this element of surprise. So often we'll have monsters enter into the scenes in atypical fashions. There are a number of different elements in the dungeon that often will catch players unaware. There are also outdoor spaces to explore and adventure in within the outskirts of Stormreach. This quest is one to prevent at least 200 kobolds who are coming to attack one of the outposts of Stormreach. On the whole, even with our outdoor spaces, we didn't want that completely endless landscape feel of confusion and having players get lost. That is a typical example in some of the other MMPs. We still want the spaces to be conducive to the adventure and having fun. When you die, you have a few options in the dungeon or the adventure. Every time you die, you drop a soul stone, and players players in your group can take that soul stone to a resurrection shrine, and you can use that resurrection shrine to be brought back to life. You're tied to within 10 meters of your soul stone, so if you get too far away from it, you'll teleport back there, as is about to happen to this poor deceased cleric right here. The marketplace is the next ward in the city of Stormreach that you come to after you conquered the harbor. This is the hub, not just of Stormreach's commerce. So up ahead, for example, is the Great Bazaar, in which a number of Stormreach vendors congregate and will become a natural grouping point for players. So here, vendors of all types congregate and sell and buy different types of wares from players. There are also other types of shops in Stormreach called pawn shops. These types of shops, which can typically only be found in the higher level wards, are actually keep around items that players sell to them. So if you want to try to find and buy treasure that other players have picked up from dungeons, you would be able to do so in a pawn shop. One of the most recent features we've added into the game is the experience report. So scrolling up, it gives you some baseline information about your dungeon experience, such as the difficulty level. Dungeons, adventures, and D&D Online have 3 different difficulty settings: normal, hard, and elite. You have to complete the dungeon on normal in order to earn the ability to go into hard, and complete it on hard in order to go into elite. Completing the dungeon on elite gives you a one-time only experience point bonus for having done so. In addition to the base XP and the level of the dungeon, you also get to see what types of optional objectives are available in the dungeon. Sometimes those are revealed as soon as you enter the dungeon to give you a context of what lies ahead. Other times you have to come across those experiences in order to unlock them. It also gives you some information about, for example, how often you've re-entered the dungeon, what level you are compared to the dungeon level. This is all to give you a sense of how the XP calculation is actually taking an effect once you've gone ahead and conquered the dungeon. Finally, and the coolest part of the experience report, are the dungeon statistics. So this is a listing of what you've done inside that dungeon. So for example, how many monsters you and anyone in your party have killed, how many treasure chests you found, how many traps you've disabled, how many secret doors or other types of secrets you've discovered in the dungeon, and how many breakables you smashed. Depending on how successful you are in any of those objectives compared to the total number of possible items there are to do in each category, you learn another type of experience point bonus. So for example, if there are 100 monsters in the dungeon and you killed all of 100, you and your party will get a mega death bonus. Conversely, if you and your party manage to get through a dungeon without killing, by killing say less than 5% of monsters, you and your party would receive a stealth bonus. So this is all just to incentivize the different ways that D&D players typically approach their various adventures. So here we have a rogue going through one of our dungeons in D&D Online. The rogue plays a really important part in the gameplay of DDO. So here, for example, he gets a message that's letting him know that his spot skill detected something that might be hidden. So here the rogue can engage in his search. And he discovers there a secret door. But in addition to spotting and searching, a rogue can also do such things as move silently in the dungeon. So there, both the opacity of the character, the footsteps he's making, and the eyes next to him is telling him how sneaky he's being, which in this case was not sneaky enough for the spider's spot skill. Here, that symbol above the rogue's head is letting him know that he's poisoned. So typically players will often come across in dungeons either side passages or certain types of obstacles that only a rogue or another type of class can get through. Typically the main path in the dungeon is not blocked by those things, but rather side paths that would lead to either additional experience points or additional treasure. So generally a party will find it in their best interest to have a variety of different classes and abilities available to them as they journey through the dungeon. Here's an example of a rest shrine that players will typically come across in D&D Online. So to the left is the actual rest shrine in which players can heal back some hit points and some of their spell points in order to keep them going throughout the dungeon. To the right is a resurrection shrine where players would have to bring a fallen comrade soul stone in order to resurrect them. So here his spot skill is letting him know that there were danger ahead. He decided to blindly go forth anyway. But upon a careful search, revealing the different traps. Now some traps have a control box that you can use to disable them. Other traps, there are no control boxes, and it's rather up to the players, figuring out exactly how best to get through the trap without taking any damage. Here the player is getting held by, there's a number of spellcasters on the various platforms both above and below the player. So again, D&D Online is very much a game conducive to going in with your friends and partying together. There are solo adventures, and some players will be able to succeed in solo play. But just like the heart of tabletop D&D is you and your friends having a good time together going through a dungeon, the same is true for DDO. We really wanted to make sure that all the dungeon adventures had really good and key moments for each different type of character class, so that really the players can operate together effectively as opposed to just trying to do it alone. There is no such thing as the concept of a one-man army in D&D Online.